Welcome to episode 82 of the Luke Macias Show. First of all, from last week, guys, I just want to thank those of you who reached out, who emailed us, who texted me, who called me, just thanking me for saying the things I said. That podcast got a little bit more traction than some of our others in the past, and I think it's because, one, we were able to take an initial conversation and really dive deep into it. Some of you probably saw footage from the House floor for the first time of actually not only what real debates look like, but then also looking at a politician who is willing to say he did one thing when the record clearly shows he did another. Just kind of brought to light, one, the need for actually putting information out there and the need for taking that type of video and audio and presenting it to you Texans so that you know more facts. So for those of you who encouraged me from last week's episode, I just want to thank you so much. And we will continue to try to bring you information as often as possible. And that really gets me into the biggest thing I want to talk to you about, which is a change going on at the Luke Macias Show. A number of weeks I teased that there was going to be some slight transitions happening here at the Luke Macias Show. And today I'm going to announce that as of this episode, we are officially solely sponsored by and under the umbrella of the Texas Scorecard, which is now corporately known as Scorecard Media. And we are going to be joining the team at Texas Scorecard and bringing the Luke Macias Show under their production so that we can get it to even more Texans. I want to talk to you a little bit about this. So many of you have followed Michael Sullivan and the Texas Scorecard for a very long time. And you know, if you have followed them and if you followed me, that they are people that I have gone arm in arm with into the battle of Texas politics. And they are people who have stood against many of the same establishment politicians who want to say one thing and want to do another. And so I'm excited about this shift that is happening. Just a couple weeks ago, Michael announced the changes that are going on at the Texas Scorecard, and I'm just going to give you a couple of the things that he said. So the Scorecard team is not only growing right now, but it has also become its own entity, which is corporately known as Scorecard Media. And they have a couple guiding principles that I want to read for you, because I think my hope is that you will read these and agree that these are things that the Luke Macias Show has already been doing and that we will continue to do. So the Texas Scorecard's brand promise, this is guiding all we do, which means it's guiding all I do when it comes to the content that I bring to you. One, we never want to be personal. Politics can get personal at times. It's just at the end of the day, you're talking about people's power. You're talking about people's pride, their positions. So anytime you're in politics, personal is an area that it can go. But the reality is that I don't think anybody would say that the Luke Macias Show has gotten personal when it comes to the information that we've brought to you and the facts that we've brought to you. If you ever feel like I do, please feel free to call me out. In fact, I'm telling you right now that this is a brand promise and a guiding principle of the Luke Macias Show. I believe that we've not only had, but we are definitely going to have going forward. And so if you feel like that ever happens, you feel free to let me know, because our promise to you is that we're not going to get personal. Now, some elected officials, I'll tell you this, whenever you talk about politics, there are a lot of elected officials that feel like their voting record is personal. They feel like their acts as a public official are personal. And to bring light to any of those public acts is a personal attack. That is not what we're talking about here. But we are talking about the importance of making sure that we're focusing on the information, the facts, and the policies in front of us. The other promise is that we'll always be trustworthy with the facts in context. And this actually, I think, really is a good example when you look at last week's podcast, when we not only wanted to say, hey, we feel like there's information about taxpayer-funded lobbying that these politicians are ignoring. We wanted to show you the actual voting record. We wanted to go and show you the actual statements from legislators on the floor. Why? So that you knew we were putting everything in as much context as possible. Not only did we show what Kyle Biederman and Mays Middleton and Dade Phelan said that disagreed with the representative, but we also showed what Trent Ashby had to say. And he was somebody that we didn't agree with, that Representative Springer at the time was agreeing with. And so even in that light, we were trying to give context to both sides of that conversation. The next thing is we want to be relentlessly pro-citizen and unabashedly pro-liberty. And I think if you've heard me for any period of time, you would know that I'm a big believer that citizens have to be empowered. And I want you to be further empowered with more information and more knowledge so that you can help make a difference within the Lone Star State. We want to pursue our heritage of self-governance. And this is a guiding principle, again, for Texas Scorecard and Scorecard Media, but it's also a guiding principle for where I think we're going. The truth is that so many people use a term right now. They'll talk about how we need to keep Texas free. But if you've been following Texas for the last several months, Texas doesn't feel very free. I actually was talking to a friend of mine who was in North Carolina just recently, and they have a Democrat governor. And he said, Luke, I walked around and realized that people in North Carolina are more free than they are in Texas. And we had a conversation about why that was. It was interesting because North Carolina felt a lot like Texas felt when Governor Abbott first kind of talked about a mask mandate. And he said, this is what I want all the citizens to do. But here's the deal. What we found was that a lot of the law enforcement weren't walking around writing tickets left and right. And he didn't want to have people ticketed. So then what he said was, well, the businesses will be ticketed, right? We're going to go after these businesses. And there wasn't a statewide mask mandate at the time, but there were these cities' mask mandates, but so many people weren't following them and people couldn't be fined. And all of a sudden it turned into taking every one of our businesses and making them be enforcers of the state. And there was a real notable shift at that moment in time. And then, of course, the individual mask mandate came out after Governor Abbott had already disagreed with that position. He disagreed with himself publicly and then reversed course and said, this is what I want Texas to be. This is the state I want us to exemplify. I talked about this when I was in Tennessee just a couple months ago with my family on vacation, realizing this state feels completely different than Texas does. And I look at the state of North Carolina and I look at the state of Tennessee and I look at the state of Florida, and they're not any different than Texas. So the point I'm making to you is that when we talk about we need to keep Texas free, one of our problems is that we're not free. Why? Because our heritage is self-governance. This is an idea and a founding principle. It's where we have come from, but it's not where we are today. And so many times our politicians will point to New York and California and say, guess what? Those states are much less free than us, so doesn't it feel good to be free? But being free in comparison to New York or California is kind of like being the tallest midget in the room. And so instead, we should actually be comparing ourselves to our heritage, comparing ourselves to what actual freedom and self-governance looks like. And if we use that as a goal and a barometer and something to shoot for, then guess what? We're actually going to pursue moving the other direction than we're currently moving. The left is constantly getting little wins that are growing government day by day, and it's happening under Republican rule in our state. What does that mean? It means we're not pursuing our heritage of self-governance. We're just more slowly going into fully state-run governance over you as an individual. And that's not acceptable. I think that's very harmful to society as a whole. So this is one of the guiding promises, that we're going to pursue our heritage of self-governance. And the last thing is we're going to inspire without venting. And personally, I don't really like the fact that Michael put this on one of the promises, because now I have to really think through whether I'm venting. But that's okay. Y'all have probably heard me vent a couple times. And according to this promise, I can't vent anymore, which means I'm going to have to really make sure I don't get going off on one of those tangents. And it's so easy to do sometimes. So my new promise to you, the other ones I can definitely say were already, I think, being held to, but I'm going to make a new promise that I'm not going to vent. And I will take up issue with Michael at some point as to why he made that one of the guiding principles. But here's what you need to know. I am incredibly excited and honored to be joining with the Texas Scorecard team. Why? Why? Because anytime we can spread our message into more Texans' hands, hearts, minds, ears, I think we want to not only take advantage of that, but we want to jump into it with our full, full-throated. I want to jump all in. I'm absolutely not only thrilled that we're going to get to access more Texans with our information, but also that the information's not going to be watered down one bit. If I was going to team up with anybody for the Luke Macias show, I want to tell you something. I would not want to do it at all if I felt like I couldn't produce the same content that I've been producing for the last year and a half, because I think that we have provided unique information to Texans, and so many of you have reached out to us and said, hey, thanks for having that conversation. Thanks for talking about that issue, because I haven't found anyone else talking about it. If I felt like in any way we'd be hampered, I wouldn't be doing this. But not only do I feel like that's not the case, I feel like this is only going to propel our message even further. So I wanted to come to you with the information of the changes going on. You will now know these changes, and you'll see some changes on the Luke Macias show over the next several months that will occur, and all of them are only done in an effort to make sure that this message gets to even more Texans, even more effectively, and hopefully with a little less venting along the way. Guys, thank you so much for the journey that you've already joined me on for the last year and a half. It honestly, in some ways, a year and a half seems like just yesterday, but in COVID times, it feels more like 5 years ago that we decided to start this podcast. I wanted to start it because I wanted to bring you more stories and conversation and talking about different issues that weren't getting covered. And I think we've done that. And I think we will do that even more as we're able to join the Texas Scorecard team. Thank you so much for continuing to support the podcast. Please, again, go to lukemacias.com, go to the Texas Scorecard, find out more information. We want to continue to publish this information so that you can access it. God bless you. God bless Texas. Thank you so much for watching this video through in its entirety. If you're somebody who's been following on with the conversations and the commentary that we've been producing here, we're going to ask you to do a couple quick things. Go to lukemacias.com. You can give us your email and sign up. We will email you new content, commentary, conversations as we produce it. Also, you can, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can like our page, follow our page, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. This will just continue to ensure that when we produce content, it gets to you more easily. Thank you so much for continuing to support the conversations we're producing. God bless you. God bless Texas.